Hi everyone, I'm Stacy with Team Soul Navigation and welcome to Talk Show Tuesday. This week you will be viewing part 2 of the amazing conversation that I had with Henny around the secrets of the planets. So get your beverage of choice and get comfortable and enjoy the episode.
So Henny, now we're going to do something really fun for everybody watching. Would you like to explain to everybody what we're going to do?
Yes, everyone. So Stacy from Soul Navigation is gonna give you a message from each of the planets. She's gonna pull a tarot card and also an affirmation card. So Stacy, and these messages are going to be secret messages from the planet. Okay, so you're only getting these messages if you watched the whole video. Let's start whenever you're ready, Stacey. Whenever you feel ready to bring a spirit through. But I thought we could start maybe with the sun. If you could give us a couple of messages from the sun.
Absolutely. So today I'm using the Muse Tarot, which I just love. It's a new deck for me, but it's just such a beautiful deck. So let's see what the sun has to say for everybody watching today as a secret message. Okay, so we have the Muse of Emotions. This is a beautiful deck, and what this reminds me of is I think the sun is asking us to sort of step out of what is comfortable and really exude the light, spread the light around us, and just allow ourselves. There's also this element of like connecting to other people too. So I think the sun is really asking you to sort of connect with other people in this way of integrity and be your true self. Like step aside of sort of the fears or worries and anxieties and just allow yourself to be in the truth of who you are and shine that light so bright as we would often think about with the sun. Because the sun is, it does like attention, right? The sun will get your attention in the sky. But I think here the sun is also asking us to find this balance and really be ourselves with other people, not only just on the inside, but with other people too. So that's what I feel is the message coming from the sun. But let's pull an affirmation card that can help us with this. Okay, so what's interesting is that we have a root chakra affirmation, and it's I am centered and grounded to the earth. So this is also taking all of that light from the sun, and how are we going to ground it on earth? So for those of you who may be experiencing a lunar or solar return, you may find that it's about grounding your light on earth right now and really stepping into who you are and shining that really bright and sharing it with other people. So what planet would you like to explore next?
Thank you very much, Stacey. Thank you very much. And thank you. This message was great. I think you also really touched on the Pisces season energies right now. And happy birthday if you are a Pisces. This video should be coming out when it's still your season. So happy birthday. And I just wanted to tell everyone as well that we're only doing the traditional planets today. Maybe another episode, we'll do more on our lovely Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But the next planet, Stacey, I wanted to see if we could get some messages for is the moon.
The moon. Okay. So let's see what the moon has to say to us all. Okay, so we have here the Muse of Inspiration. And if we look at here, there is so much fire element to this. I think there's also, look at that, there's a full moon in the background.
Wow.
And it's a little hard to see, but there's like pyramids. There's a whole lot going on with this card. So what I really feel with this is that there's an element of the moon of where it reminds me of almost a phoenix, because I do feel like a phoenix element coming in from this card. So I think what the moon is trying to tell us is that, with each phase of the moon, because it does go through so many phases and kind of changes phases, like you mentioned, that there's always this opportunity to rebirth, rejuvenate. And if we maybe don't love a direction that the moon is kind of taking us, or that life is taking us, or our emotions are taking us, that there's always an opportunity for revitalization and reflection, but also like correction, because it's my personal opinion where I don't feel like anybody can reach a point where they're so off path that they can't get back on track. And I think that the message with the moon here is that there's always opportunity with the moon. And I do feel, I'm going to see if I can show the card a little bit better, but there's so much fire elements in this card too, where it just reminds me of it's almost like an eclipse. I feel like that, almost like that, the eclipse where it turns red, like the blood eclipse, reminds me of this a little bit with that. But I do think that there's tremendous growth and rising above, almost like a resurrection happening with the moon. So I think that that's kind of the secret message from the moon there, is that it's really, I think that the moon is really resurrecting us and really sort of providing this element of like a driving force, which sometimes we don't always see from the moon, but there's a lot of mystery in the moon that comes from that, because like you mentioned, the moon kind of governs water. And as humans, we are mostly water within our physical bodies, so we are affected by the moon probably more than any other planet. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. Yeah, I agree. And if you're a Cancer rising, especially, you better agree.
I happen to be a Cancer rising, so maybe that's why. Yeah, we have lots of Cancers here at Soul Navigation, because I think Susie is a Cancer sun, but and because maybe the moon changes signs so frequently too, that there's always this different element of the moon that it has to offer us.
Yeah.
So let's see what affirmation card. This one popped right out. So I am attracting more and more abundance in my life. So that is the affirmation for the moon for all of us. I'm attracting more and more abundance in my life. And I think that's perfect for the moon, because, we can manifest with a new moon. We can release with a full moon. Right now, we're recording this on the full moon in Virgo. And I do want to say with this card too, that with the element of fire, I think that also brings in the element of healing that we can have within ourselves. So if somebody's going through something right now, I would say maybe work with the moon and the phases of the moon, because aside from the full moon and the new moon, there are all other great phases of the moon that we can work with, that can incorporate healing, or sort of like, I think the crescent moon deals with things like miracles. So we can work with other phases of the moon and incorporate them in our lives too.
Oh, that is fascinating. I did not know about the miracles. Lovely. Yeah.
So what planet would you like to explore next for a secret message?
Yes. So could we get secret messages, please, from our trickster of the zodiac, Mercury?
Okay. Let's take a look here. Okay. So there's actually two cards here that wanted to come out for Mercury. So the first card is the Temperance card. And this deck is so beautiful in its imagery. And with Mercury, and with the Temperance, it's all about balance, right? But with Mercury, I do feel that there's sort of a need of sort of bridging the above and below and taking the wisdom of Mercury. I think what Mercury is trying to tell us is like, when you're having the moments of where you find Mercury frustrating for you, tap into that deeper wisdom of Mercury and how you can apply it in your life and bring in that balance of it. The other card that came in for Mercury is the 10 of Materials.
Wow.
And if you look at this card, everybody's kind of standing around. I like to think of it almost as like the tree of life. But so I think that there is this collective need right now too for people to communicate with each other in a way that is balanced and more understanding of people and things and really the earth. I mean, all creatures, like, and all energy, really. But I feel like we're in a place of where, and we are in the age of Aquarius, so to speak. I like to think we are. And I think that that's going to also change how we work with Mercury and communication, and even digitally. So I think that the message here from Mercury is tap into the higher wisdom that Mercury has to offer us. And I think for some people, depending on where they have it, maybe taking a pause before words come out of their mouth sometimes. And also, don't be afraid to take ownership too when you don't understand something, and then take accountability for your own words that come out of your mouth with Mercury too. And I do think that there's a need when we look at this card and people gathering and coming together. So I would say, that balance, but then also having that integrity and accountability and the wisdom of Mercury, and being mindful of what comes out of our mouth with that Mercury, which it's not always easy.
No.
All right, so let's pull an affirmation card for Mercury and how we can maybe work with Mercury. Okay, so this is a heart chakra affirmation. I am fully open and I give and receive love. So I think this is a great reminder too, that when we're dealing with Mercury, like, try to come from a place of love when you communicate. And I like to think that there's essentially two emotions, right? Fear and love. And it's not always easy to come from that element of love, but try to really hone in on the loving aspects of Mercury too, is what I'm going to say with that.
That is lovely. Thank you. And I love that you got the Temperance card, because that's my card of the Tower deck, the Temperance card.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful card. I love it. Thank you. So the next planet, please, Stacey, is our sweet warmonger, Venus.
Okay. Let's take a look at what Venus has to say for us. I keep feeling with this Venus, we had a Venus retrograde in 2020, and I feel like we're still kind of feeling maybe even the remnants of that still. I keep seeing the Lovers card show up here, but let's see what card Venus is going to go with. Okay, so here we have another beautiful card, the Ace of Voices, and there's so much going on with this card. So we've got the light coming out from the side of her head. We've got Tibetan prayer flags. We have the owl, which, it reminds me when you talked about Venus for a second, and you mentioned how it was originally the planet of war, and it reminded me of Athena from Greek mythology. Yeah. And she carried an owl. And somewhere along Greek mythology, or, when you mentioned with Venus, it moved from sort of this planet of war to this loving planet. And it reminds me how it went from maybe Athena to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And Athena and Aphrodite didn't like each other very much either. They had their own issues with each other. So, but with this, it's kind of reminding me, and even if you look like her hair, is all rainbow, and I love that. I think they call it unicorn hair. I'm not quite sure, but there's so much going on with this card, and I think that there's what Venus wants people to know is this to really step into this element of just being completely free in you and who you are as an individual, and just let it just completely free yourself. Because with anybody, really, the only person that can set yourself free is you. And so I think with Venus here, there's this element of like standing in your truth, being in your truth, and accepting yourself for who you are, and just recognizing the beauty and the strength that comes with that. Because to be incarnated on the earth as a human, I think is one of the most bravest things that anybody can do. So everybody who's on this earth right now should kind of give themselves a round of applause for being here, even when it's really, really hard. And, and I think that again, with this owl, to me, it also symbolizes this element of victory. So I think it is in perfect alignment with what you were saying about this essence of it originally being the planet of war. And I think maybe what Venus might be trying to tell us is that it wants to kind of step back into that element, because love in and of itself can be a very powerful driving force. Love can make you do all kinds of things. Love can make you have incredible strength. It can bring you to the depths of something and then back up again. And it's resilient in it too. So I think that's the message coming in from Venus. And I can't help but also be pointed out by Spirit is that there's this element of a circle that comes from that too, and a pyramid, which I think is also some sacred geometry, but it's like coming full circle with stuff too. So I think Venus is also trying to remind us of things coming together in a beautiful way of what we've perhaps sort of worked through in our life or endured when it comes to love and war.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a beautiful card too. I am the universe and I have all I need to succeed. So I think that what Venus is trying to tell us is that Venus also has everything under control. Like we have everything we need to succeed if we tap into that element of Venus and really harness it, but also recognize it as sort of a force to be reckoned with in our lives. I really feel is what Venus is trying to tell us. But it's very, very powerful. I can definitely feel it from here. And I just want to show people at home this card one more time. So, because there's so many different elements to this card where it just reminds me of all the elements, like the air, the fire, the water, and the earth all together, and how that plays a role.
I love it.
Yeah. Were you picking up any sort of vibes from maybe Venus, since it was a highlight of our video?
Yeah, we talked a lot about Venus, didn't we? And also, I really like what you mentioned just now when you're reading for the messages from Venus. I talked about like the circle and sort of things sort of being perfect alignment, this sort of thing. And you just reminded us of the Mayans again, and how their calendars, they were kind of like cogs. So they had like one calendar for, it's a bit complicated, but one calendar for one set of things, and then another calendar. And then when the cogs sort of met like that, the day would be very like auspicious. And there'll be really, really auspicious days. And then you have another cog. So there's like lots of different calendars working together. It wasn't just like one. And you just reminded me of their love for Venus and how everything is working as part of a bigger set of cogs.
Yeah, and I think isn't Venus more on the smaller scale of planets too? Like, when it comes to size.
Yeah, I think it's very small. It's a very kind of cute sort of creme brulee colored planet. Yeah.
But to your
I
point,
love Venus.
it's the hottest planet, so
Mhm.
you know we got to be careful with that Venus.
Yes, the
All
heat
right.
of the passion as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, she's in Pisces now.
Yes.
So exaltation. That's good. Okay, so Stacey, how about we move on to the next planet? And this time, could we get some messages, please, from Mars?
Sure. All right. Let's see what Mars has to say. And Mars right now is getting a lot of attention because NASA just sent that rover up to Mars, so we're finally kind of getting more information about Mars and its surface and what that has to offer us on a more of a three-dimensional aspect. But let's see what Mars wants to tell us. And I think it was Mars when we talked about like going on this quest and this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I was referring to the Crusades. And again, I feel like with Mars, there's this element. This card keeps popping up with Mars, but I want to just see what else, because to me, okay, there's this element. It's the 10 of inspiration. And when we look at it, it reminds me a lot of the surface of Mars, that what we've been seeing images of.
Very right.
And then if you look too, there's also the element, to me, it looks like a bull. But then she's carrying this sort of pottery. So there's this element of where it brings in that sort of this vulnerability and kind of letting the bull loose in the china shop, so to speak. So I think with Mars, there's this element of where one is breaking down old structures that may not be serving them anymore. That Mars is really working in your favor to kind of clear those limiting beliefs or those old programmings that are running in the background for somebody. The second card that came in for Mars is the Hierophant card. So when we look at this card, this is all, I like to think of this card as like spirituality, right? And this can certainly be, sometimes this is viewed as the marriage card in traditional tarot. But to me, this almost feels like a merging sort of the soul with the higher self. And I think we can really harness this Mars element for us in our everyday life, because even this card, you can see there's almost like lanterns, where it's like looking out at the light, and almost the element of the night sky with Mars. And recently, I think it was in November, we could see Mars with sort of our naked eye, right, in the sky. So I think that Mars is, even though it's on this journey and on this quest, I do think that there's a little bit of vulnerability that can be had with Mars, that it can be highlighted in such a magnificent way that it can just be such a powerhouse. But sometimes we have to get through that limited belief or that old programming in order to get to that other side. And with the Hierophant card here too, I do feel like there's a need to almost, for people to understand Mars even on a spiritual level and how you relate to it in your own practices spiritually, and whatever that may mean for, meditation or connecting to guides or even working with some of the elementals. All right, so let's see what Mars wants to use for an affirmation. Okay, so this is a third eye affirmation card. I am intuitive and I use my intuition wisely. So as with any kind of quest or warrior journey that somebody is going to go on, I think it's important to trust the intuition that where you're being led. It kind of is reminding me a little bit of Joan of Arc. Mm-hmm. And, how people thought she was crazy because she was telling people that she was hearing, the voice of God, and God was leading her through the journey. And I think it's important to trust our intuition. So when we're getting that nudge from Mars, to trust that and trust where it's heading, where we're headed with that.
Thank you very much, Stacey. You know what? I'm so amazed by this message in particular, because it almost seems to me like Mars is kind of sending us this scream from Taurus, where it is right now. And Uranus is there, and you talked about dismantling programs, and we had the bull as well, and the Hierophant. I mean, when I do tarot readings, when I see the Hierophant, I think Taurus as well. It's just, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mars. Okay, so our next planet, please, Stacey, is going to be the massive Jupiter.
Okay. And Henny, do you happen to know how long Mars is in Taurus for? Because I know Mars was in Aries for it felt like a whole year, but it usually doesn't transit that long in one sign, right?
Yeah, it's usually not long. I mean, I don't know the specific number of days, but I reckon it's around about 2 to 3 weeks. So a rough month. I think I might be wrong, but I think it's roughly a month, and there's not long actually. Mars, I think it's March 14th or 15th when by that time Mars will be in Gemini.
Okay. Thank you for that information. So we're looking at Jupiter now, right?
Yes,
that's the planet
please.
we're on. Okay. Okay. So the card for Jupiter is the 5 of Inspiration. There is definitely, this deck is like every card has so much going on in it. It's just beautiful. With this card, I definitely feel it's kind of giving me a little bit of almost like Alice in Wonderland vibes with this, where it's like kind of looking through the looking glass, so to speak. And almost, when we talked about Jupiter, with this card, I almost feel like there's a little bit of illusion that can be had with Jupiter sometimes. So depending on where you have Jupiter right now, because Jupiter is in Aquarius right now, I believe. And so wherever you may have that in your chart, I feel like there's this element of making sure that you're seeing things clearly through this Jupiter. And because if you look at this, there's also a lot of mirrors in this card too. So I think right now people, for Jupiter, there's a little bit of reflection that's happening, but I also feel this element of where there might be some things that are reflecting back at you that may not be comfortable either, and wanting to almost go into an escapism that's happening. So I think the message for Jupiter is to allow yourself to be in that flow and sort of there's this element of wanting to be sort of a constant, which I feel can kind of be hard with Jupiter because it's always expanding, right? Because it is the gaseous planet. So there's all kinds of stuff happening on Jupiter that can almost make it fluctuate every day, even though it tends to stay consistent in a sign. And it's not so fluid like the moon, where it changes signs every, day and a half to 2 days. But there's this element of, I feel like being true to yourself and not falling for illusion right now, or where something might be magnified in your life that can seem like a really big deal, but where it's all going to kind of work out just great. So like being in the flow of Jupiter. And if you've been worried about something, just kind of know that it's going to blow over. And I think you can use the luck of Jupiter on your side with that element. But it does feel like there's some stuff kind of going on in the background, but just kind of know that everything's going to work out okay with that. So let's see what affirmation card wants to come through for Jupiter. And I would also say that with this Jupiter, there is an element of tapping into the creativity a bit more with Jupiter and expanding the creative aspects of your life. So this is the heart chakra affirmation. I am forgiving myself as I forgive others. And I think that that's a beautiful way of perhaps looking at Jupiter, because as with perhaps any form of good luck, there is usually sort of a release that happens right before like a lucky streak, right? Where there's this moment of despair where somebody can be at a point of wanting to give up. And I think that this affirmation can remind us that in each moment, everybody's doing the best that they can. So allowing us to forgive ourselves, to forgive others, and that's when some of this good fortune can start to unfold for everybody.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, that's big, and I mean, we've got Jupiter in Aquarius now, and yeah, you mentioned this sort of feeling still a bit introspective, I guess. Jupiter's still kind of got this introspection, and it's not been long out of Capricorn, and Saturn is right behind it. So it's almost like there's a little bit more freedom, lightness, but Saturn's still there with the severity. Okay, Jupiter. Well, let's see how things pan out as you go through Aquarius.
Yes.
All right. So our last planet, Stacey, our last traditional planet for today, that's what we've been covering, is going to be Saturn, please.
All right. So let's take a look at what Saturn has to say for us. I think Saturn has got a lot of focus on it too, because it's, Saturn has had a lot of conjunctions and a lot of aspects. And I think, isn't Saturn also making sort of a square to Uranus right now, and perhaps throughout the course of the year? So Saturn's been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Saturn, what do you want to say to us? Okay, it's so interesting. Well, the first card that I was guided to pull was the Ten of Materials, which we received. I forget what planet we got it for. But it's going to mean, I think, something slightly different for this. But what's interesting is that we pulled the moon for Saturn too. So with this, I think that there's definitely, I think what Saturn's trying to tell us with this is that there is this sort of, I definitely feel the collective part with this card still too, but it feels like there's a tremendous amount of collective sort of healing and clearing that's happening right now with Saturn, and how it's really working in the benefit of us. And I feel like Saturn is trying to say, like, I'm not this big bully. Like, I think Saturn is just misunderstood. So it's trying to let us know that it does have our best interest at heart, because even with this moon card, and it's the moon in this card, it reminds me of that blood moon, kind of like how we talked about before. But there's this element of coming to completion almost with Saturn. So I know that Saturn deals a lot with kind of karmic and fairness, and looking at perhaps our good behaviors or our bad behaviors. Saturn sometimes reminds me a little bit of like Santa Claus, like double checking if we're naughty or nice. But I feel like the message here with Saturn is that we are in a big time of healing that collective, and healing the collective karma too, as well as individual karma. But there's this element of where it feels like it's resetting our emotions, where perhaps our emotions, I personally have found that sometimes emotions are really hard to articulate.
Yeah.
And I think Saturn is going to help people to begin to articulate their emotions and understand their emotions. Because it's really, if we can't understand our emotions, it's hard to talk about it. And like if we look at like a relationship, one of the things that most people want to know is how does the other person feel, right? And if some people just don't have the language to be able to identify the emotion. And I think what Saturn is really trying to tell us with this too is like it's kind of our ally in helping us to articulate our emotions at times. So maybe tapping into that Saturn energy. And I also feel like there's this past life element that Saturn is coming in to help people with too. So understanding that maybe there's a little bit of past life stuff happening with this Saturn for people, or maybe even the Saturn in Aquarius. So let's see what affirmation card wants to come up. All right. I am embracing my highest self. So allowing us again to kind of sort of merge with our higher self and the soul. But it's like, to me, having this with that Saturn, it just feels like growing into that emotional maturity that Saturn can have, and stepping away from being this sort of misunderstood bad bully into a helpful counselor. You know, I want to pull one other card for Saturn.
Yes.
And I'm using a different deck here. So the card that came in, this is from the Psychic Tarot, but it's the Heartache and Loss card. So I think what Saturn is also asking us to do is, which is not easy, but allow us to place the past in the past and really like step through that new door and allow yourself to forgive yourself for who you were in the past. Because Saturn can bring, sometimes with Saturn, it can be like, this aspect of judgment and what we've done in the past and how that can be carried forward into our future. And, there can be, whether it's self-judgment or judgment of others or projection of judgment, but it does feel the need to release some of that heartache and loss and free yourself from the heaviness that Saturn can sometimes bring, but it's only there really for you to free yourself from it. Because to me, there is an element of where Saturn can bring freedom too for us. And, Saturn can bring about wishes for us too. So, and that those karmic rewards, sort of speak, so I think that there's a lot with that. And I'd like to, if I can, maybe just pull one card for all the planets at like a collective planetary universal. Nice.
You're spoiling us, Stacey.
Okay. Oh, sometimes Spirit has such a sense of humor. Okay. So again, it's the Muse of Inspiration, which we pulled for the moon.
Yes.
So this element of, again, that resurrection coming about. But then I pulled one more, and it's the Six of Inspiration. But when I look at this card, I really feel it is representative of the Star card too. So there's this element of, I think right now, what's important for all the planets, all the planets are trying to tell us as a message is to kind of hang in there, because there is this sort of glory and this grace coming from all of these planetary systems that may feel like right now it's burning inside. Like some people may feel like their insides are on their outsides and they're on fire and there's salt being poured on them, but there are better days coming. And so there's also this element of rising into the best version that one can be, not for other people, but for yourself, and recognizing that within you.
I really like this message. It's very like, yeah, it almost reads like an intergalactic message as well. And especially with these planets all in Aquarius, there's a lot of that, Aquarius, Leo axis, individualism, but also thinking of the bigger picture, joining the dots, and and with Saturn in the mix as well. Like, it's almost, as you mentioned, I love all the messages you produced from Saturn. Like, it's almost like Saturn is, allowing us to be individual, but to be serious about that, right? To be serious about our individuality and our part in the picture.
Yeah.
I love it.
And the collective.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of the Secrets of the Planets with myself and Henny. Join us next week for a new episode of Talk Show Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye, everybody.